Hey y'all, it's Bart. Welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. And on this episode, we are talking about I feel like, a fairly productive October 2023 window for the U.S. men's national team. Friendlies against Germany and Ghana. One win, one loss. But overall, again, in my opinion, I felt like we learned some things and found some things out that we can build on for the future. To talk about those friendlies and some more things, it's my friends in soccer. First up is Thomas, aka US Keeper on Twitter. Thomas, you've survived a couple of youth soccer tournaments recently. How do you feel as a soccer dad?
It's been exhausting. It's a long season. I did two different teams. One I coach, one I don't. So it's been a long season. A couple more weeks, and we're through that. So it's been fun now. It's fun, watching the kids grow and develop during the season. I mean, that's the thing. That growth is awesome. So I love being around it.
And people forget that the growth, development, and fun are the most important things. A man who is no stranger to being on the sideline, either coaching or watching his kids play. It is my friend Caleb, aka USMNT Corner. Caleb, you have been very busy. You have watched a lot of soccer recently, both in person and on television. And so, therefore, you are the perfect person to ask, why did the U23 men's national team not only beat Mexico 2-0? Why did we give up that last goal?
Because they knew no one could see it. That's why they knew that no one could watch, and so they didn't care. Yeah, you talk about being busy and watching soccer and coaching soccer, and then watching the U.S. play. Saturday, I was up at 4:30 in the morning. Was gone all day. Came home, sat in the chair for 15 minutes. Went to a haunted house. I had missed because I was gone all day. I missed the Germany game, so I had to watch it back. And I made it to halftime before I realized there's no chance I could watch the second half. So I
Oh,
actually had to
no.
finish that a little bit later. But it's busy. It's tough being a nerd, a soccer nerd when you're busy. It's tough.
Well, I watched the Germany game from 30,000 feet in the air. I was on a plane and got to watch that in flight entertainment. They had the live TNT broadcast, and that was pretty
Oh,
awesome because I was
that
able
is
to
awesome.
also get the free Wi-Fi and tweet about it while watching. So that was pretty cool. Thanks, Delta. Shout out to y'all. Um, Before we talk about these two games, though, we do need to talk about the fact that we have some cool things that happened in U.S. soccer. First off, as we mentioned, the U23 men's national team in their first real Olympic tune-up beat both Mexico and Japan in their friendlies in Phoenix. The scoreline against Mexico was 2-1 and a 4-1 win against Japan. Pretty good performances. I think if you would ask me, the Japan game was weird because it felt like Japan should have scored more, but they didn't, and we did. Thomas, I mean, look, again, we've talked about this, how it's just good to get the guys together in a group like this, but it actually was a decent window as well.
Yeah, I was excited to see the roster. It was got some good quality on there. Some names we've seen in the national team camp, and playing against two good opponents. And that's what we got to see going forward. We got to see that same continuity. I'm hoping U.S. Soccer is doing their due diligence and making sure that these players are going to be available, for release, for the Olympics, because as we all know, it's not required that clubs release players for the Olympics. So it was a it was a good result. It was good scheduling of it. So let's keep it moving forward in that area for sure.
Yeah, Kayla, we got to watch some young stars that it feels like we've known about them for a while. But it's just kind of, again, it's good to see them in an actual group together.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's nice to see the not restructuring, but just the actual
Structuring.
semblance of structure
Yeah.
in like the chronological order of youth teams. For so long, out of necessity, we didn't really have youth teams. We didn't have that structure. So I mean, that to me is just cool, and is going to continue to speak to the depth of the U.S. Pool. But one thing I will say with the Japan result, I had seen some rumblings. I don't know where. Maybe it was just some obscure corners of USMNT Twitter, but people were talking about how Japan is just so clear of the U.S. And I think that result would say otherwise. Japan's good, and I love to see what they're doing over there. And I follow, the career of Tom Bayer and soccer starts at home and the things that he's doing over there. And I think it's absolutely phenomenal. But I think it's, to a tweet that I made a week or so ago, it's like popular now to be negative about our program. Like I can't be the only person that's noticed that, whether it's players or just the program as a whole. You're going to get more hits and more impressions and more interaction through negativity, it seems like right now, which is just I don't know, it's weird. It's weird to me.
Well, I think you're 100% right about that. But I think to me, what's going on specifically with these U23 friendlies is very positive. The results honestly aren't that important. And I think I've said this a couple times. I don't care about the actual result of any youth tournament. Like, to me, they don't matter that much because you're not always getting the actual best talent in that age group. Now, if we go on and win the gold medal next summer, it will be the most important thing we've ever done. So please, don't quote me on saying they're not important then. But it's just nice to see.
Well, I think you're right about that, and I think Thomas made a great point about players aren't always going to be released, and it's important for us for U.S. Soccer to do their due diligence. But we talked about the structure being a positive, and I'm with you though as far as just results of these last two games. Does it really matter? No, but I think it gives us a sense of where we are as far as our development, our senior team. We see how young they are and how dynamic they are, but it's nice to see that the guys that are coming up are following in the same suit. So I think that's where the positives are coming from these windows.
Moving on to some other cool U.S. soccer news. The U.S. Deaf Women's National Team won the Deaf World Cup, the World Championships in Malaysia. That is fantastic. Congrats to those women. The Power Soccer team is into the knockouts of their World Cup, which is also pretty awesome. We had a really successful Beach World Cup. I forget the name of the woman, so I'm sorry, but she won the golden ball of the tournament. So some really awesome extended national team performances recently for U.S. Soccer. That is awesome to see. We also have schedules for the U19 men's and women's national teams at the Pan Am Games, which starts in 3 days. So glad they finally released the schedules. The women play on October 22nd, which is Sunday at 2 p.m. Then they play on the 25th at noon and the 28th at noon as well. The men, their big game against Brazil is 5 p.m. on Monday, October 23rd. So definitely be able to watch that. Then you have on the 26th, a 2 p.m. game, and on the 29th, a 5 p.m. game against Colombia. You can watch all these on the Pan Am Sports app. If you go to, I think it's panamsports.com, it'll give you more, but Pan Am Sports app, if you want to watch all that kind of stuff. Again, U19 is playing in a tournament. It's cool that we qualified for this as well. Glad to see that. We also have a kit leak for next year. We won't talk too much about it, but it is white and it has blue and red cuffs, and that's about as much as we need to describe. But it's just cool that we get a leak. Caleb, you like it? You tweeted you liked it.
Let's calm down, okay? I don't know if I like it. I think because it seems like every kit that's come out I have hated and everybody's hated, and it's just been nothing but just vitriol and anger and throwing things. It came out and I looked at it and it wasn't immediate hate. So I said I might buy this one. So it's, and we talked a little bit before, so I'll let Thomas go into it because I think he's spot on as to why people are so frustrated with the kits. But I mean, if you just look at it specifically without the context of anything else, it is fine. It's not ugly. So that's where I stand.
Yeah, Thomas, you are the kit historian, and I think you've been pretty vocal about what your preferred type of kit would be. This doesn't necessarily follow that, but it does kind of look similar to a lot of kits we've had recently.
Yeah, it's again not. I don't hate it. I certainly don't love it. It definitely falls in the middle. I mean, I think when you look at a couple of kits like this, you look at the, the Centennial one, and you look at the 2020 kit, right? They're very similar. They're classic. They're just mostly white. They've got variation of the navy blue and the red, right? And then they kind of fall into that, and so that falls into that. So that makes it more appealing than what we have now, of course. And I think that there's just not creativity. There's just no creativity in terms of how these are being created. But again,
Hmm.
but we're seeing consistency with this, right? Right? Like it or not, U.S. soccer is okay with it, right? I mean, they've worn, the majority of the kits they've wore have been white. In
Yeah,
terms of the kits they've worn in matches, right? That's their go-to. They don't care about the identity. They truly don't because they think the white kit is theirs for some reason, which I don't understand it because to me, a white kit's a white kit. You can look on the screen, you have no idea who's playing if you just saw the white kits. I mean, we saw it at the World Cup. You wouldn't know. Could be U.S., could be
yeah.
someone else, right?
I don't know. We want a more exciting secondary kit. That is the official stance of Soccer for Us. We want an exciting secondary kit.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's what we were talking about. How as far as a white kit, it's fine. It's fine. But the anger and the frustration from fans is the fact that that's all we get, and everything we get is boring. If we had a cool secondary kit or even an alternate kit, like a third, then the white would be perfectly fine and acceptable. That's our frustration that we don't get
Yeah.
anything different. We don't get anything creative. We don't get anything that is iconic, that shows identity. And it's just, it is extremely frustrating from fans who want to be excited to rep the U.S. men's national team, U.S. women's national team, just the U.S. program in general. But we get crap.
Anyway, let's move on. let's talk about these. Let's talk about something that has been more controversial apparently on U.S. Soccer Twitter. Let's talk about these two games the U.S. played in October. The first one was a 3-1 win. Excuse me, a 3-1. I'm going to restart that. The first one was a 3-1 loss to Germany in East Hartford, Connecticut. It was a sold out crowd at the college football stadium that is Rentschler Field at Pratt Whitney Stadium or Pratt Whitney Stadium at Rentschler Field, whichever one, on the campus of UConn, where supposedly and reportedly they do actually play college football. That has yet to be confirmed by my sources, but it was a kind of gray and dreary day from the looks of it, but a sold out crowd again, a very nice atmosphere. And unfortunately for the US, what ended up being a loss, but I don't know. I thought that we started off pretty good. We got a brilliant, not necessarily solo goal from Pulisic, but a solo effort at the end. Unfortunately, we conceded right before halftime and then twice early in the second half. Thomas, real quick, I mean, the result says 3-1, but what did your eyes tell you about this performance?
It's a game of two different halves, really. I mean, a lot of energy in the first half. You got pretty much your A team on the field, right? A lot of good opportunities, a lot of pressure, but there was a lot of pressure from Germany too. So there was a lot of action in that first half. It's unfortunate to give that late goal up, towards the end of the half in there, but I think that we saw a lot of exciting things in there. And then we go to the halftime, and then Reina comes out, and they have to adjust, right? So those adjustments are something that Greg's going to need to work on, right? He's got to, because they happen, right? Tired, injuries, whatever it
Yeah.
is in the middle of
Gio's
the game.
healthy now. Who knows if he'll be healthy
Right.
next
So
week?
you have to be able to adjust on the fly. And so he knew Gio was coming out. So do you continue playing the same way you are, or do you adjust? So I didn't really see adjustments. Germany they're stacked. I mean, so they had a stronger more attack. It seems like the U.S. kind of pulled back a little bit more and didn't have as much attack on the field. Was that because Reina was out? I don't know. Probably part of it. But, you know, these are learning games, right? We want to see that. You learn from it, and then you take it and say, geez, you know what? We could have done this better. We could have done that better. That's why you take these opportunities to learn that, because it's not Copa America. It's not the World Cup, right? It's, you know, it's a rare chance now we get these days to play top tier European clubs. Take it, learn from it,
Yeah.
and you know, go forward.
Yeah,
Be
and
better.
I think that's a great point that this Germany team, they don't have to qualify for the next Euro. So all the European teams going through Euro qualification this window, they weren't a part of that. Apparently, they were super mad that they flew over here for a game. And to that, I say, screw y'all. Our players have to do that all the time. But Caleb, I do want to set the tone though, because the starting 11, right? I think a lot of people liked it. I think it was probably the best 11 players that you could put out there given this roster. You had Turner in goal, you had Dest on the left, Ream and Richards in the middle, Scally on the right. Your midfield three was Musa, McKinney, Gio Reyna, and then your front three, Pulisic on the left, Ballo in the middle, and Weah on the right. Again, I thought this was the most talented, if you will, 11 players you could put on the field to start the game.
Yeah, absolutely, which is something we're not used to seeing from Berhalter. I figure, even with the roster that he had to select from, he in the past would have found ways to still somehow mess that up, right? I feel like this lineup kind of selects itself. It's, Berhalter, BJ, Hudson, like anybody in charge is probably going to find this lineup, give or take maybe one, maybe two players difference, talking about center backs or fullbacks. But I thought it was great. It was extremely strong. And there's no surprise that we looked good. The dangerous moments that we had, it looked like the players were comfortable. They knew what they were doing. A lot of it came from individual talent, but also the understanding that they have with each other. I mean, on Pulisic's goal, Ballo stepping in on that wing, playing him in, and then, Pulisic doing the rest. The guys just, you can tell they like playing with each other. And it looks like it's probably going to be very close to our strongest lineup moving forward. I know with Ream in there, he is getting a little older. Some people said he just needs to be done, which was kind of a weird take for me, because in possession, I thought he looked really good. He had some great moments getting out of pressure. He is so good. I hope he can work with all of our center backs on that little, just got that little shoulder fake where he gets that striker that presses to bite, and then he just pops it up, gets in front, and then he can, put a pass in the midfield without pressure. It's such a nice little part to his game. And then he had that one switch that, I don't know if a lot of people saw it, but that switch that he hit, low, driven, dare I say, John Anthony Brooks-esque, ping over to Gio on the right wing. A lot of our guys can't do that. So I still think he has value, but I do think over the next 2 years, we probably need to be looking at some sort of answer for him, which again, we'll probably talk about later when we get into the Ghana game. But I think maybe a Miles Richards is probably that pairing there.
Yeah, I think for me, that was the only gripe I had with the lineup is I want to see someone other than Tim Ream in these biggest games, because I don't trust that Tim will be available to play and be the best option at center back come next summer, because he is 37 years old, and we don't know Father Time is undefeated is a saying, but we just don't know how long he can hold this. But yeah, I think it's an important thing to denote, and Thomas, you hit on this as well, that there was a difference when Gio was taken out, when we had Luca De La Torre come in. My question, though, and this is, what I genuinely don't know, is what were the other options Greg had Is it a tactical switch? So we're adjusting the formation a bit from, now you go 2 defensive midfielders, but even still, is Luka the guy to do that? And so that's my question: is people are criticizing Greg for his tactics, and I think there's a lot of times we can do that, but in this situation, I go, okay, well, we took off Gio because he had a minutes restriction of some sort. We put on Luca De La Torre, who is a good player. He just didn't get the job done. So, Thomas, I'm just wondering, like, how much of that was tactical in your opinion? And how much of just when you took off Gio, there went all the talent we have in the midfield?
I mean, I think it's both. I mean, I think when you're adjusting in the flow of a game, especially when you do know that the sub is coming, how are you going to adjust? Or you can, because it seemed like they kind of were trying to play the same pressing, attacking, but they just didn't have the creativity in the midfield that Gio was able to provide. So you kind of have to realize that he's an exceptional player, and you have to be able to figure ways to do that and take your chances, right? And so the one thing with the US you've seen a little bit more is that they're countering a lot more, like in Greg's first pass there was very few counters each match. You get a couple, but now they're playing a little bit more free flowing in these matches, and you're seeing that counter. And I think they're gonna kind of have to play a little bit of a dirty soccer. You want to be organized. You want all these beautiful soccer, but like there's something to be said for the old school U.S. soccer, right? They play these top teams. They grind it out. They might win. They might lose, but if they lose, they're going to lose a damn close game most times, right? And so I think it got a little bit away from them because they scored those 2 quick goals
Yeah.
in the second half, and it was just like everything just fell apart, right? They in that small window of time, and they just they don't have the horses at that point to be able to counter a 2-goal deficit.
Yeah, and like to me, that's the catch-22. And Caleb, maybe you have a little bit more insight on this, but to Thomas, your point, like, yeah, in the past we would have kind of bunkered a little bit, been more defensive. Greg's not gonna do that. I mean, and I have to say that I'm pro that. I don't want the US to just bunker and hope that we get a result like we have in the past, because we do have talented players. But as you pointed out, Thomas, and again, Caleb, I think this is the question is, when Gio's not on the field, when you don't have Gio, Weah, Pulisic, Ballo, McKinney, like when you don't have all those guys on the field, Dest included, and your talent level then drops significantly, do we need to resort to the more defensive style?
Well, I think just very simply, with Gio in the game and then you make the sub, if you aren't going to make a like for like, then you have to change tactics. Regardless of whether a player is extremely talented like Gio and we don't have anybody else like him, if you're going to make a sub and it is not a like for like, period, you have to change tactics.
Yeah.
And like for me, if Malik Tillman, I hate that he got hurt, but if he was healthy and you pull Gio off and you play a Malik Tillman there, then you can continue-ish to play the same way because they have similar profiles. I would have even been fine with a Brendan Aronson in the spot. It's a little different, but he's still a little bit more creative than a De La Torre. He's going to, push the tempo. He can find those passes, whereas De La Torre is a little bit more a black and white player. He's very good. He's technically sound. You know what you're going to get from him. But he does change the game completely.
Yeah.
And so if when Greg didn't change tactically, I think that's where we saw some of those struggles.
Yeah, I think, and again, the question still is, okay, so how do we adjust that tactical formation? Because
so if he's smart,
what would you say?
Right. If he's smart, then I think you make the sub, right? If he wants to go with a De La Torre, that's fine. Okay, cool. Then, hey, boys, here's how we're playing now, right? And I would change and go a bit more defensive. If you don't have a guy like Gio who is press resistant almost, you've got that in a Musa, you've got that in a McKinney and you've got that in a Gio, right? You have all three of those guys that are so comfortable that they do not get they don't get frustrated, they don't get panicky, like they can break a press by themselves. So now you take one out, you've only got two of those guys. So you kind of already have to be more defensive there. Like that answers itself. And I think they still were thinking they can play the exact same way. And I think that's where the disconnect was, because the desire to play one way, but the reality of having to play the other contradicted. And so it looked disjointed and sloppy. And then, like Thomas said, you have two quick goals. The mentality's gone there. But yeah, like you said, I'd probably go 4-2-3-1 there and have a little bit more cover, because I mean, we're not talking about a Ghana here. We're talking about a Germany.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but I look at that roster and I see, world-class talent top to bottom.
Well, and that again is the question that I always just came back to at this game is, I know Germany hasn't gotten a lot of great results recently, but Thomas, they're still, I mean, they have darn good players. Let's just put it that way, and I think it's fair to say that at just about every position, their player in that position, say for a handful maybe, is a better player than even our player. And I'm even considering, Matt Turner. I think he's great. Ter Stegen's probably better. I mean, you look at their center backs and probably better. It's just hard for me to look at it and go, yeah, we're at the same level of them talent-wise. But I think that's, again, the question of, do you then bunker, or do you, like we did in the first half, try to play with them? And I think, to your point, we tried to still play in the second half and it got away from us. So maybe we need to be a little bit savvier, but also, I mean, there's no guarantee Germany wouldn't have also still scored.
Well, I think to your point with changing, whether we go more defensive or try to stay the same way, whatever. I think, to your point, with Greg not wanting to do that, he still wants to play that way. It is a friendly, it's a learning moment. You can try and play a very specific way and lose, and it doesn't hurt you. So take advantage of that and try. Like we saw very early in his tenure, forcing the U.S. to play Mexico a specific way, I think was important to the development of our players. I really do, because it showed them kind of what they needed to work on and laid a foundation for how to build what he wanted to build. Yeah. Right. And against a Germany, he took an opportunity to continue to play a specific way, whereas maybe, I'll give him credit, I mean, I'll try, maybe in a tournament type match, when he changes Gio for De La Torre, he does change the tactics there. So maybe that was his mindset. And like I said, I don't know. I can't read his mind. So I'll give him credit there and say that that's the case.
All right, let's talk a second about Pulisic's goal, because I think this was by far the highlight of almost the entire window, to be quite honest. It was a beautiful goal. It was not just a beautiful individual effort, because I think he did a lot of good individual things on this goal, but it was a good little setup from the team and the players around him. So McKinney gets the ball. He passes quickly to Balogun, who is on basically the same parallel line as Christian Pulisic, who's on basically he's not quite touching the sideline, but I think he is maybe half a foot away. They're on the same plane. So McKinney goes to Balogun. Balogun hits a quick pass to Pulisic, and then Ballo quickly sprints, basically a diagonal that's going to go kind of diagonal curve toward the corner flag. That's, I think, what his ideal run is. So what that does is takes the right back with him, forces the right center back to also kind of shade over. Pulisic's, I don't know if he sees that or that's just the idea behind this kind of combo move in the system. Pulisic then attacks the space Ballo vacates. And then he's basically one-on-one with the right back who's a couple of steps behind him. He beats him. Rudiger has to come over from the left center back's position. There's no one behind him to help. Pulisic sees that, cuts onto his right foot a little, to the top of the box, and rips/floats a ball into the top right. It was like the weirdest way he kicked it, and the way it came off his foot, but it went straight into that upper 90 on the right side. And I mean, really, this was, again, both a great combination of individual talent and a good team and tactical goal. It was fantastic, and like I said, I think it might be the highlight of the whole window. Thomas, is this replicable? Is the question, right? That's what we have to ask whenever we score a goal like this. Do you think this is a pattern of play that we need to keep trying to work on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly what you want to see, right? I mean, because it's a good build-up play. It's a nice. I mean, there's nothing hugely fancy about it, but the finish was spectacular. I mean, those are the types of goals you need to see and need to make against top-tier talent if you're going to beat them. Pulisic really is having a great season, and it's definitely translating to the national team. And I think that's part of it too. We talk about players playing for their clubs, and sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. But he's on a roll right now, and I think it's evident, and he's making the most of it as a national team. So I like the play. I think we'll see more of it too, not just from him, from others.
I will also say it was unfortunate we only got one goal this game, because it did feel like we created, especially in the first half, other chances that we didn't quite take care of the same way. But this was really, to beat Germany in any setting, it takes great individual efforts. And this was a great individual effort, but it also takes team effort. And this was also a great team effort. So I'm hopeful we can see more of this, because the Ghana game was a lot of great team movement, but also some bad defending on Ghana. Let's go ahead and talk about that. USA 4, Ghana 0. This was much better. The question, though, is Ghana even that good? And this is a weird question, because you look at their roster and you're like, oh, yeah, that guy's good. But you watch them play, and they struggled to do a lot of things. They were a little disorganized in the back line. But, hey, you took advantage of it. You got 4 goals in an electric, dominant first half. None in the second half, and we'll talk about that, because I think, again, we have what happens when Gio Reyna comes off the field question. But Thomas, 4-0 over Ghana. They're ranked 60th in the world. We've seen this team struggle to score against similar ranked teams. So 4-0 is great, right?
Yeah, it's great to see 4 goals scored in that first half. I'm disappointed they couldn't do anything in the second half, but I think, look, each opponent's different, right? And I think Caleb had made comment to this early in the week on Twitter, basically saying, look, it's Ghana, right? The difference is that now that we have more quality talent throughout the roster and a little bit more depth, this is an expected result. Okay, this is an expected result. So while we might fight for that win before, now it's just like, okay, good result. We're learning from it, but you have to have that, right? So top tier is a top tier. How are you going to beat them? Everything else you should be beating, right? Like there's, unless you have some, you have a bad day or whatever it is, but you still have to be overly dominant, because that's what this team is right now.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to continue being. So like, there's no excuses anymore with this stuff. Like, unless they're in the top 20, top 15, like ranked. I'm expecting the U.S. to go out there and win those matches.
Yeah, Caleb. The other team may not be as great as especially Ghana. Probably not as good as they have been. They may not be great right now, but beating them is good. Scoring 4 is even better. Who was the most, you think, surprising player that kind of made this 4-goal first half? Which player do you think was the one that was most influential in that?
Well, I think that's the thing right there. And Thomas, alluded to the tweet that I made with it's Ghana, the disclaimer. So you have to temper expectations. I think he's 100% spot on. When it is teams like this, we have to go out there and put these results on. These results are absolutely expected. I think my thing is, when you're looking at individual performances like you're talking about right now, Bart, how much can you take? Because if a guy, right, like Captain Jack Sparrow, right, our Pirate of the Caribbean, Jesus Ferreira, when he's banging in goals left and right, how much can you take away when you look at the opponent, right? So that's where, when guys shine against a Ghana, how much can you read into it? My thought was how good Christopher Lund looked, as far as, kind of trying to cement himself in the lineup. I think what he did is answer a lot of the problems from half the episodes we've ever done about, we've got one left back on the roster and 17 right backs. I don't think we have that problem anymore. We have 2 left backs. And honestly, I think he was good enough. He might be giving some competition to Jedi.
Interesting.
I really do, because I am so much more comfortable with him in possession. And I think his ability in possession gave a lot of freedom to Pulisic. And as far as who was the guy, though, we've talked about it all episode long. It's Gio Reyna. If these 2 games in this window don't show how important that kid is to unlocking our attack, I mean, even just our ability to withstand a press, to break down teams that want to press, to break down teams that want to bunker, like, he is that pivotal to what we're able to do. You look at Balogun talking about how he's so excited to play with him. It is because he gets the service when Gio's on the field that he does not get otherwise.
Yeah, look, Thomas, we had a very similar front line as we did against Germany in the first half against Ghana. You had Reyna, Pulisic, Balogun, Weah. You also had Musa instead of McKinney, and then Cardoso behind them. We'll talk about Cardoso in a second, but as great as that front line was, because it was, I also really think keeping Dest on the right side as opposed to putting him on the left was really important. Because to me, that Dest and Weah combo on that right side, to me, Thomas, that was super important. And then you add in the fact that they were then combining with Gio, and it was like Ghana had nothing. They couldn't do anything.
Yeah, it's because they both kind of play the wing back a little bit, right? And so they can
Yeah.
alternate back and forth, right? And so that's actually a really nice advantage, because you figure, okay, well, I can cover, I can go up, right? And then it's hard to defend that, right? I don't care who you're playing. And so it was fun watching that, because they really worked very well together in that, and we haven't really seen that, in that combination of that. And so, yeah, and I think Des just gets in the way sometimes of Pulisic when he's on that left side with him. I mean, I don't think it works all that well in there. But yeah, it was really it was fun to watch that. It was, to me, it was very it stood out a lot when you're watching that throughout the match. I'm like, why Dest is so far up? Like, but way it's holding back. It was good. I was excited to see something a little bit different like that, because I think it's just another option out there, and they both can play that, and they have what's needed to excel in that area.
Yeah, I think it's fun. And sometimes that's what soccer is supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun. It's very fun to watch Dest and Weah work together on the same side. And then you add that Gio thing. It's great. We got 4 goals. I do want to talk a second about the fact that we got an indirect free kick inside the penalty area. One, we never see indirect free kicks other than like an offside chance. This one inside the penalty area. So chaos, weirdness ensues, and Gio scores off of a very well worked indirect free kick, puts it into the net. Thomas, I know that crazy things happen at your daughter's youth soccer games, but this was some fun, crazy stuff that happened in an actual top level adult game.
Yeah, it was. You're right. You don't see it very often. It's just it is. And so sometimes it catches you off guard, like even the player sometimes, so it was a quick reaction to that, and it was just nice to be able to see the finish on that, because it's yeah, I mean it was fun to watch on that they did what they needed to do and put it away. So
Caleb, have you ever sat down on a ball inside the penalty area? That was weird as hell.
That, I mean, everybody was like, what ref, what are we doing? I don't know what he was thinking. But all I know is as soon as I saw it, I was like, holy smokes, this is going to be fun. I don't even care what happens. Anytime you have an indirect kick in the box, you know something crazy is going to happen. And here's the best part. That wasn't from the training ground, right? No, they didn't work on that. You could sit there and watch them. They were sitting there whispering, here's do this. And the fact that it came off was just so satisfying, so much fun. And you can tell they love playing with each other.
Yeah.
They're enjoying it.
It was Pulisic, Balogun, and Reyna, right? The three guys that you're like, if we're going to do something, we need those three to step up. And the fact that it was Pulisic to Balogun to Reyna, like that, yeah.
It couldn't have been more perfect. That was just so much fun to see. Like I said, anytime there's an indirect kick in the box, just grab the popcorn because something funny is going to happen, or exciting, or in our case,
something entertaining will happen.
Exactly.
We also got a good penalty kick goal from Christian Pulisic. I thought it was a really good take, and I'm glad we kind of see him stepping up as the guy to take penalty kicks. I know he's been doing it for a while, but like his confidence is pretty darn good, and it was not your typical penalty kick goal either.
7 for 7 for the U.S. I mean,
oh god, so he's gonna miss the pen in a World Cup quarterfinal.
No. Find some wood. I don't have any wood. I don't have any wood near me. Find some wood. 7 for 7. And here's what I love. When that happens, Weah goes down, right? Penalty's called. Gio picks the ball up. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I wonder if they're going to let Gio get this. And, it wasn't even a question. It wasn't even a question. Pulisic just walks over, like he owns it. He didn't even ask for it. And Gio and they all know, like, this is Pulisic's. And he's earned that. 100% he's earned that.
Yeah, Thomas, I mean, look, you got to have a guy who's willing to not just step up, but then can make it. And can't argue, it's Christian Pulisic. He's our penalty kick taker now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a weird, there's a weird stigma. I never understood it about players who are the ones that score penalty kicks. They get less of credit for scoring a penalty. But I'm like, there's a lot of stress that goes into that. There's a lot of pressure in that moment, and to be able to do that consistently is going to be huge. So I think, I know Donovan was one of those players. I think he scored 15 PKs in his U.S. men's national career, and Dempsey was only 6, right? So, you can see who was taking them, but you got to make them, and he's doing that right now. So I think he's the person to do that. I will say on the adverse, I know he's been taking a lot of good set pieces with his club, but I need to see Gio if he's out there. Let's say Gio takes some of these corners. You know what I mean? Like thank you, Christian, for doing that, but it's time to give Gio a shot if he's going to be on the field for those.
100%. 100%. I mean, I don't think it's a question. He has more technical ability to put that ball where he wants it. With Pulisic, so often he's not clearing the first defender. And it happens too often for it to be like, oh, that was just a bad one. No, it's kind of a consistent thing. And with Gio, he might hit 10 and only one of them's bad, right? Versus, well, there were 5 good ones. Yeah, that's fine if that's all you have. But we have Gio on the field. And so that one still bugs me. That one still really bugs me.
It's especially with penalty or corner kicks, because it's like they're just not good. But hey, we did get 2 set piece goals. We had a couple of other good goals. I mean, the Gio's goal in the first half, the first goal that we scored was a well worked goal. Gio finishes it, but it was off of a rebound, but it was still a really good goal to get into position there. Good chance creation. Ballo's goal was beautiful. His little pirouette turn. So we were balling out in that first half, but the second half obviously was not the same. And I do think it's fair to do 2 things. One, you can criticize the team for not staying at 100% the whole game, but you also have to understand that this is a friendly. You're up 4-0. we got to make some business decisions, and I don't think it was bad in the second half. It was just not as dominant. But we also subbed off Gio. We subbed off Wes. We
Balogun.
subbed off Pulisic. We subbed off guys at halftime and in the second half. That of course you're going to get a slight turn down of talent, but I think the theme is we'd still like for them to go out there and push the issue. I would just say that you're up 4-0. Why are we worried that much about a friendly where you're up 4-0? Thomas, I don't know.
Yeah, you still have to take the opportunity in a friendly or tournament to have a plan in place, right? So I mean, he's making those subs. He knows what he's doing in these friendlies. He knows who's coming on, who's coming off. You know what I mean? Have a plan in place. If it's a formation change, if it's tactic change, go in there and make that change, because you're gonna have to do that when these games matter. So I don't miss out on those opportunities to say, hey, what can we do, right? Take a few opportunities out here. Let's see a couple of different players in the mix and see how they work together.
Yeah.
Because those combinations are going to be important as we go forward to see where those fit in. I know you mentioned Johnny, and I think he's going to have to be a player because Adams is out till February at least, right? And so now we have to look at who's going to help fill that spot. And is it Johnny? Is it Maloney? Who's going to fill that gap and finding that combination that's going to work with the A-B type players in there. And so when you have that second half, you have to be able to try to build onto that. And I think they did a little bit, but again, you kind of want to see another goal or two in that second half to kind of say, yeah, okay, we're doing things right. We can do it without Gio. We can do it without Pulisic, right?
Yeah. And I think that would have been fair, right? I don't think we were far from scoring goals. It just was, sometimes things don't happen the way you want them to. But I'm with you that it would have been nice to have still seen them press the issue, because in theory, we still have good guys coming in behind him. I mean, Pepe, De La Torre, Aronson, McKennie, those are still good players. And we do need them to kind of produce. But anyway, we get the 4-0 win. I want to end this by talking about things that we learned, right? And I think for me, the first thing that I learned, period, I think we can keep Dest as the starting right back. We do not need to move him to the left side if Jedi can't go. I'm not saying that Lund is necessarily the absolute answer, but I think, to your point, Caleb, to me, I feel comfortable enough that he can start there. And the other thing is, Dest just gives us so much more good things on that right side than he does the left side. And he's a good player on either side from an offensive standpoint, but it just, he's better and more able to be impactful on the right side, that I don't think it's worth moving him to the left.
Well, if you've got Dest on the left and Pulisic is on the left, then you've got two people who defense isn't their first priority, right? On the same side, where, to Thomas's point, on the right side, you have Weah and Dest combining. Weah he's an absolute workhorse. He will get up and down. He will do the dirty work. And if he has to drop into the right back spot while Dest goes forward, then that's fine. He's comfortable doing that. I don't want Pulisic to be my left back in an emergency situation.
Yeah.
That's not the case. So I do think that's better for us moving forward. And the emergence of Lund gives us that ability to keep him over there. I really do like what I saw. But like I said, it is Ghana. I would have loved.
Look, we're going to be screwed if Jedi's not starting against Germany or anyone above that. That's just the reality. But
that would have been incredible to see what can Lund do against Sane.
Yeah, fair.
You know what I mean? That's one of my biggest frustrations, I guess, overall from this window is we had opportunities to find out what guys could do, going all the way back to talking about Tim Ream. We know who Tim Ream is and what he can give us. And any given time when we need to pull him up and throw him out there, we know what we're going to get. How would Miles have looked against Germany?
Fantastic, obviously.
Miles
would have been fantastic. He should have started to begin with. What was Greg thinking, putting him out there and then taking him off?
He's in MLS. he plays in MLS, so he actually cannot play soccer.
He got a 6.9, so therefore he's nowhere near as good as
Chris Richards, who had a
7-0.
7.1, which was
Yeah.
0.2 of a point,
Yeah.
but whatever.
But it's yellow as opposed to green. So
Exactly. But yeah, I think we learned a bit to build on, but it's more of like, we learned this, so let's test it again versus, yes, this is a concrete answer. Does that make sense?
it does, and that's kind of what I want to ask you, Thomas. Is like, is there any other modes that you're like, I want to test this in the future, or like, hey, I learned this. Let's see if it actually is a thing that is true versus just a trend that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think center back pairings are one we need to see more of. I mean, because there's pretty good depth there, I think, relatively speaking, once they're healthy, and so we want to see those pairings,
especially compared to what we're used to having.
Right, and so see how they work together. I think that's gonna be a big one, right? Because that's always kind of a communication piece, and it's a critical part. And so that piece of it, I think, I think it's clear that, as you mentioned, Dest is better on the right, and so I think we don't need to experiment with that. So, but then where does Scally fit in? Is he better on the left or right as a sub? Like, and so you have all those combinations, and then Johnny, where does he fit in? Like, look, I was glad to see Johnny play with the A group, because I think he hasn't had that opportunity, and so
100%.
And I think he showed pretty well. I mean, he passing was over 90%, I think, and he really he showed well. So I think it's something you want to look at again, as well. And so, does he pair better with Musa? Does he pair better with McKinney? And now we need to see where that comes into play, right? Did pretty well with Musa, but how does he look with McKinney back there, right? And so, and Greg's trying those things. I think McKinney for a period of time was playing the 10.
Yes,
in there. And so again, he's trying things, and that's what we have to be open to and say, look, I want to win these matches. I want to look good in these matches, but you know what? This is experimental time, right? You got to get creative. You got to do some of those different things if you want to continue growing that, and find these players and these combinations that are going to work. Because I said it earlier this week, we are not going to be rolling out the same starting 11 in these matches, every single match in the World Cup and Copa America. So you better damn well find a few of these combinations that are going to be successful as well, because you cannot just do that in any of these tournaments. And if you think they're going to be in shape and fit to do that, you're crazy, because we saw it against the Netherlands. They just did not have. They were a step behind because they had given everything they had to beat Iran.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what the World Cup is. And so you have to use your 23-man roster, or whatever size is going to be, and use it as the best you can to position yourself to go for that deep run, because you're not going to be able to put your ideal starting 11 out there every single match.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point, I think, and people lose that. Everybody wants to get hung up on, the best 11, the best 11. This is the best 11. Yeah, that's fantastic on a piece of paper. But how often does that present itself in reality? Form, fitness, so many things go into when guys can play. And I think you're absolutely right. Greg needs to look at, not only can this guy play, but who is he better with? Because that is reality. Some guys play better next to this guy who complements him, especially when you have natural pairings on the field, like your center backs or your fullback and your winger. What can we do there? And I think, even in Germany, the Germany game, if he plays Weston in Gio's role instead of continuing to have Weston in his previous role, I think that could have been beneficial to see, because Weston, and I'll tell you another thing that this window cemented in my mind, is Weston's ability to pass and pick out a long ball, and his vision. Like, I feel like it's gotten even better in the last year. And just continuing to see that, and seeing guys that don't get opportunities otherwise, we've got to start using these opportunities to see that. I would have much rather seen Johnny more than we did. What did he played
at 70 minutes, I think, ish against Ghana, but not enough against Germany that I would have actually liked to have seen a little bit more. Because to your point, like, we're testing it in an actual
100%
critical situation. Yeah.
100%.
But hey, I mean, the thing is, and Thomas, you Tyler Adams is out until February, so we're not getting him. And I'm not saying we need Johnny or even Musa to be fantastic against Trinidad, right? Like, I mean, I think either one of those players should be able to perform well in the two-legged series against Trinidad. But the reality is we may not get both of them starting, or, we may not be able to start one of them in both games against Trinidad. We may, be an injury or just, you look at the stats and they're a little too fatigued. We're going to have other combinations. And I do feel after this window slightly better about the backup to Tyler Adams position. And I do feel slightly better about the backup to Jedi Robinson position. Thomas, let's just wrap it up though. These two friendlies were fun. It was nice to watch, but November, something happens that matters. And I know it's just Trinidad. You can talk about a Caribbean island nation as much as you want, but it's two competitive matches that you kind of have to win to qualify for Copa America. So how did this window leave you feeling for those matches and just Copa America in general?
I mean, for the home match, I'm fine with, right? Because I expect a high level. I expect the crowd to be there. It's going to be in Austin, Texas, so it's a stadium these players have played in before. So I think that's not the issue. Is how is Greg going to prepare them for the road match, right? Because you take care of it. You win 6-0 at home. You position yourself goal differential wise pretty solid to go.
If we won 6-0 at home, then frickin' start Christopher Lund at striker and Trinidad. But you're right.
You have the ability to do it at home, but this is where the U.S. has just not been very good. They've got to find ways to win on the road, and they're a better team. You can make all the excuses you want about it's traveling. I mean, look, everyone does it, right? So you have to go out there and you've got to have a different mentality. You cannot play for a draw. You got to play for the win. You got to go out there and figure it out. Look, the field conditions are going to be crappy. Figure it out, right? Like the only team they seem to really prepare road-wise for is Mexico.
Yep.
They bring in these tents to sleep in for high elevation stuff, like during that period of time. They get down there early or whatever it is. Like they prep for it because of the altitude and the pollution and all the other stuff that goes with that. But why aren't they putting that same effort into these other opponents? Because they're not. I mean, they've never won in Costa Rica. I mean, we know the history of Trinidad and Tobago, going back to the 2018 cycle. So have that mentality and that same urgency when you're playing against any of these other CONCACAF teams, because they're not successful, and we need to see more of that, especially with this squad. And they're not going to play a lot of road matches this cycle. I mean, other than Nations League, I just don't see them playing anything on the road. I think they want to get all the money they can and playing at home, and maybe we'll see a window where they play in Europe, but they just need to come out and execute, score early, score often, and go ahead and just put it away and give them no doubt and get into Copa America. I mean, that's the goal, and these guys want to play at that highest level. I know they do. So I'm hoping we have similar squad in place, and they can go ahead and just take care of business and leave no doubt.
Yeah, I definitely feel better about this team going into the Nations League window, but I also didn't need to be convinced a whole lot. We should beat Trinidad. We know that's confirmed. It's Trinidad. We know that. So we'll talk more about that in November when we get the roster and lead up for that. But I just want to thank you both for being here. You can follow Thomas at US Keeper on Twitter. You can follow Caleb at USMNT Corner. You can follow the show at SoccerForUS Pod. Don't forget to subscribe to Soccer Down Here to get all of the content coming out of the SDH network. And if you feel so generous, support the show at buymeacoffee.com/SoccerForUsPod. Gentlemen, I appreciate your insight. Thanks for breaking down these games against Germany and Ghana with me. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.